7:09 on CJAD. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, and we welcome back Josh Miller of Fuller Landau. Josh, welcome back. It's been a nice summer. It's our fourth season now on today's Entrepreneur.
Hello, Dan, and it's great to be back. Fantastic summer, and what better way to start off with a business that's 65 years old that everybody is really looking forward to going to see. They've done some renovations in their home, or they're about to, and it's a great way to kick off. But the summer, Dan, you know, entrepreneurs love and hate the summer. Why do they love and hate the summer? It's very simple. They love the summer because, you know, it's people are a little more relaxed. It's a little calmer. It's, they can get things done a little bit more. They can focus on their business and look ahead. And why do they hate the summer? Because nobody does very much in the summer. It's tough to get things moving forward. But notwithstanding that, the gentlemen that are here tonight, John and Matt Auger from C&M Textiles, they didn't waste their summer. They were busy during their summer. You're going to hear all about that. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us, Josh.
Thanks for coming in. So, guys, maybe first tell us a little bit about C&M Textiles. It's a name that's really familiar to CJAD's audience. Tell us what you do and how long you've been doing it for.
Well, C&M Textiles has been around, like Josh said, for over 65 years. We are a fabric store that specializes in custom drapery, bedding, custom blinds, motorization, etc.
Okay.
Has your product and services changed over the years? I mean, I know you haven't been there 65 years. It's previous generations. But has that developed or kind of reinvented itself over the years?
I think we initially started off as a lot of dress fabrics and a lot of fabrics for apparel and costume making and all that kind of stuff. And we've grown to have more of a home decor priority in the store. It grew over the years. It wasn't as prominent back in my grandfather's times, but now our home decor fabrics has been a large part of our business, and it continues to be popular.
Now, you guys, as we said, it's 65 years old, and we've had the pleasure, a couple of seasons ago of having your dad and your uncle on the show, Peter. This is the next generation. How did you guys get into this business? Where was the beginning for you?
Well, I started when I was 15 years old. After a career in the MLB wasn't going to happen, I decided to work into the family business, and I started from the ground up. So my daily routine consisted of getting in the morning, sweeping the floors, getting fabrics for clients, because we have all the rolls in the second and third levels of the store. So anytime a customer wanted fabrics, I'd be called upon to go get the roll, cut fabric, and basically do more of the maintenance aspect. And I did that for close to 4 years before I got promoted to handle the wholesale aspect of the business. We do have satellite stores in Quebec and a few across Canada that carry our full line of fabrics and that draw from the inventory in our Montreal warehouse. So I serviced all those stores and filled orders and shipped and received and all that.
John, did you have a similar entry into the business? You kind of started also from the ground.
Definitely. That's you got to pay your dues, and we all started from the ground up, and eventually, from learning all the inventory and all the qualities of fabrics, you eventually evolve into sales. It's very important to know the product before you sell it, and because we're based on customer service, we wanted to make sure that we had enough background in order to be able to sell, and then we took that knowledge with us to our second store.
Before we get to the second store, there's the evolution of roles. In any family business, you have the fathers of the previous generation that, the kids come in and what do the kids do? Where are their roles? Where do they develop? From that wholesale, was that something that was guided, that was said, in your case, Matt, going to wholesale, was you were going to go do that, or did you choose to take that route?
I sort of persuaded a more active role in the business, and that was something that I could have seen myself doing, and I started off slowly and getting help from my uncle and my father, and it really helped me know every single one of the fabrics we stocked, because I had to sample all the stores. So one after the other, I was invoicing for the same fabrics, and I'd see the same fabrics every day, countless times. So it really allowed me to know our full product line, which is the number one key in eventually selling. So that was a good building block for becoming a salesperson and a consultant in home decor.
When you're talking about family business and you have several members of the family, there's no doubt that roles play a huge part of it. And who dictates those roles and how you get there is really interesting, in how the company develops. When we come back from the break, and even before we get to the first expansion store, we'll kind of talk a little bit about, father, son, uncle, nephew, and a little bit how they interrelated.
And John and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles are guests on today's Entrepreneur. It's 7:19. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller, back for our fourth season. Monday nights at 7 here on CJAD. And Josh on the program tonight, Jonathan and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles. Many generations in this business, and this comes up frequently on the program, Josh, because it can... in a sense, be great for the business, certainly by producing loyalty and family values, but some drama may ensue sometimes, right?
And there are so many different areas and aspects to run a business. How do you divvy those roles up, and who takes what? And is it the first generation? And part of it, there's a control aspect to it that I'm sure every part of the family goes, and some passes on the generation of control or not. So interested to hear from John and Matt. How did the roles progress, and how did, I guess, putting it bluntly, when did your fathers stop treating you like kids?
Well, we basically had to, take the initiative and kind of force ourselves into the proper meetings and force ourselves, prove to them that we were ready to handle some of the tasks besides the tasks that they were delegating to us. Obviously, it's a bit of a challenge when you're used to, first of all, with the amount of employees we do have doing great jobs, and with the amount of generation families working within the store, it's very hard to make your place and, to break routines. So without us kind of fighting for our rights to, have decisions and prove to them that we could, our voice could be valued, and we've been earning our stripes. We've been learning the products. We've been learning how the store runs. So we kind of had to, push ourselves into those meetings.
Now, what happened the first time that you disagreed with either of your fathers? Did that work well? Did you talk it out? How did that work?
Well, it worked.
Unless you never disagree with them, which
well,
I don't believe.
I'm trying to think of a time where we have a great deal of respect for our fathers. So, a lot of times, especially early on in our careers, we'd sort of defer to what they thought, and if they think that it should be done this way, then we're going to go along with it. Even if we had sort of reservations about it, or even slight reservations about it. But I find that especially now we're a lot more vocal on the direction of where we want our business to go. So Jonathan and I are very involved in all the decision makings across our three stores, and so we definitely put a lot more input and into our father's.
Was there a turning point? At what stage did you find that they did start? Maybe listening more is a bad term, but where they really started to get more of your input.
Well, the moment we agreed upon a second location, at first they were reluctant. When the store first opened in Ottawa, they kind of had a plan where, Matthew and I would handle most of the tasks, the day-to-day operations, but, either my father or my uncle would be checking in physically by showing up to the store once a week or spending a couple of nights. But, that was all planned, but it actually never ever happened. So they kind of...
We're still waiting for them to visit.
Yeah. They kind of, allowed us to grow and allowed us to, whether we were doing great or whether we had to learn from our mistakes, they kind of gave us the reins, and we kind of took it upon ourselves and, communicated well with each other and learnt on our own. And they were always there for advice and for consult, but they never actually showed up.
And I think that probably in hindsight was the best possible thing that could happen, because we didn't have our fathers to rely on to make decisions. So Jonathan and I had to start from the ground up and make all mistakes that were going to happen on our own and learn from them. And well, thank goodness there weren't many mistakes, but it gave us a chance to really figure out for ourselves and how to run a store from A to Z. So it was probably the best thing that could happen.
Was it predetermined that you guys would get into the family business?
Not predetermined. Actually, they kind of not so much pushed us away, but they were encouraging us to, continue on with our education and pursue careers elsewhere before starting, because I'm sure they felt that they knew that the moment we would start working there, it would probably mean that we would stay. And not that that was a bad thing, but they really wanted us to experience, everything else before that was our final decision. And, it just turned out that, it's either it's in our blood or it's just what we love to do. And, by them delegating more and more roles to us, it just became our passion as well.
C&M Textiles, Jonathan and Matthew Auger on today's Entrepreneur. More on the other side. Welcome back on the program this evening. Jonathan and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles. And Josh, this is a business that is expanding.
It is, and before we get to their latest location at Quartier 10-30, let's start at the first location that the boys kind of took it on their own, and that's Ottawa. You had mentioned Ottawa as being, your first foray out on your own, a brand new C&M store, well beyond the St. Hubert location that it's come to know for. Tell us a little bit about that, and kind of some of the few really important items that you learned when opening that store.
Well, we definitely learned a few things with regards to communication and customer service. So we definitely learned to have to take on the responsibility of handling all the good clients and also, any problems that would arise with some of the employees' clients. And we had to be the decision makers on, how do we proceed from there. We learned definitely the hardships of either finding staff or, definitely delegating and relying on the staff that you have. We came from a background of, the owners will do everything in the store. They're there 60 hours a week, and they're basically not giving as much power to the employees. Whereas Matthew and myself, with our new stores, we had to really learn to put faith and trust in the staff that we have and allow them to, take some of the reins as well.
Did you lean on the previous generation, or did you really feel you had to prove to make it on your own?
Probably that we had to prove to make it on our own, because it was new. Not only was it new for us to have a new location, but C&M in 60 some odd years had only had one big destination store. They had never had a multiple location business and a different concept where it's not cut and carry. It's you have a showroom concept with ordering from the inventory. So
did you reinvent yourself in Ottawa? Was it very different than the St. Hubert store that had existed for so many years?
Well, it's a different setup as far as the home decor department goes. I mean, the fabric not having, people are used to seeing the bolts and rummaging and whipping out the yards, and it's a different concept in that it was more of a showroom feel and lot cleaner. A lot of people liked the way it was organized on samples. And our delivery on the fabrics was short, so it was really the concept that we tried out, and it's worked.
What worked in the St. Hubert store that you absolutely had to keep from an operations or client standpoint in Ottawa?
Customer service, absolutely. Because if you don't, especially when you're in a new market, in a new city, of course there was certain clients in Ottawa that had heard of C&M and knew of C&M, but the majority of people in the city, we were new to them. So had we just opened up a random store with the same beautiful quality fabrics, but didn't have the customer service to follow that, it probably would never have worked. And C&M's history for the past 65 years has always been customer service number one.
Yeah, don't forget, we're not selling jeans off the rack or sweatshirts or this and that. I mean, you're trying to convince. We're trying to convince people to do a whole wall of fabric.
And now you're taking that experience and bringing it to 10-30, which is where we're going to explore next. when we come back.
So more expansion with John and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles, and advice for today's entrepreneur, and advice for your IT sector of your business. So that's all coming up on today's Entrepreneur at 7:30. Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. Dan Delmar and Fuller Landau's Josh Miller back for a fourth season here Monday nights on CJAD. And our guest this evening, Jonathan and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles, family business. It's been around for a long time. I'm sure many of our CJAD audience is familiar with it. And guys, you're expanding. You expanded to Ottawa, and you're going where a lot of Quebec retailers are going, and that is to the south shore of Montreal and the Quartier des 30, as it's known. Tell us why you decided to go to that hotspot right now, and why you think so many people are heading there.
Well, I think you said it first and foremost. It is a hot spot, and for those of you that have not driven out to the South Shore and seen the Quartier des 30, if you do, you will know exactly why we chose that location, because it's a huge retail site. And especially our section, it has basically all home decor focused retailers, from furniture to carpets, etc. And we were reluctant to go to the South Shore because it was relatively unknown to Matthew and I, and to our family, and we had considered other locations, whether it was Laval or the West Island. But proximity to where our original flagship store was a concern as well. And once we saw the developments, residential and commercial, out on the South Shore, it was just a no-brainer for us. And obviously the type of clientele we have, it's important for them to be able to park easily, and our customers spend not just 10 minutes in our store, they spend a couple of hours. So it was very important for us, and the center is just so impressive.
Now, after going through the experience of opening a store in Ottawa, what knowledge did you take with you when you were opening the store here? Did you have any different issues, whether it was with lease negotiations or anything of the like?
Well, I'll tell you, the lease negotiations were probably the biggest learning experience for Jonathan and I. I mean, when we were in negotiations with our agent who had found us the location, it was. Looking at it, an 80-page booklet of legal jargon that, to go through the negotiations was arduous. I mean, it was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of things that we had to bring, from being a primarily advantageous to the landlord to at least some concessions to the retailer. So,
what was your biggest lesson in all that?
I
Lesson
find
learned.
that you ask and you receive. So we demanded a few things, and luckily enough, and kindly enough, they obliged. So we were really happy with what transpired.
But get good advice, because on the onset it looks just like a contract that you would think is in favor of you or them. You feel like it's going to be 50-50, but the moment it gets broken down to you by whether it's lawyers or accountants, whoever your team of advisors are, it's shocking what's actually in there and how your rights really aren't protected in any way.
I just want to pick up on a comment you said earlier. When it came to Discount, you were around some of your competitors. Did you guys think that would be something that in the end would put you at an advantage to be in that district, that garment district, in a way?
Well, I think being around a few competitors is healthy, because it creates a market for people to shop around, and we're very confident in our product line and what we have to offer, and the fact that we're exclusive on a vast majority of our fabric collection. We're not we're confident in our position in the market for home decor fabrics and stuff.
Do you keep tabs on your competition? Like, I mean, do you go into their stores? Do you see what they're doing? Do you either try and stay ahead of them or not? How actively do you monitor them?
Well, we try to monitor them as much as possible with certain products that we wouldn't be exclusive on necessarily. In large part, a lot of our custom blind division, our home automation division, there's a lot of different retailers or a lot of different, whether it's installers, kind of trying to get into our market and take a share of our market. So we try to ensure that with the volumes we do, we always offer the same, or if not better products at a much better value and a much better price. But, it's very hard to control what one other person is going to sell and at what price. But whether it's driving, whether we go to their websites or we actually go to the actual locations and see, we always try to make sure that whatever promotions are out there, we know it before the customers do, and we could offer better if possible.
Now, when you're building a store and you're starting new and you're having SKUs and you have all the leaseholds, I imagine that financing or starting up with, a certain amount of working capital, a certain amount of dollars can be difficult for some startup businesses. Now, this is a third location, so maybe it was easier. Perhaps you can recount a little bit of how that worked for you and maybe what you learned different in this store versus previous ones.
Well, in the Ottawa location, it was, like you said, a very new experience for all of us involved in the C&M family. And we just assumed that, whatever worked for St. Hubert would work in any other location, but it's not the case. The Ottawa market was completely different. However, we still took on a huge inventory based on the first assumption that whatever we sold in Montreal would sell there. And, it kind of hindered us in the first few years. And we learned a lesson with the third location that, we were very reluctant to take any inventory. We wanted to really keep it at a bare minimum, make it a showroom concept as much as possible, but offering all of the same products at the same time, which is not easy. And we wanted to see how the clients would react in the South Shore. And based on their demand, see what we actually do need to stock versus taking the whole, gamut.
When you're talking about stock, it's a huge dilemma for many entrepreneurs and many businesses. What do I carry? How much do I carry? How much do I buy? And I imagine that the number of SKUs or product lines that you have is immense. How are you translating that into your new locations? What have you learned, or what are you doing a little differently in this one versus the others?
Well, this store, like Ottawa, is feeding off the inventory, the expansive inventory in the Montreal location. So we're not really. I mean, we're being a lot more selective in our buying and making sure we not so much bring in the quantity, but the quality, and we want to make sure that what we're buying is going to have a high turnover. And instead of we're being more selective in our purchasing.
But are you doing that normally? I mean, with buying the economy downturn, have you become a lot more selective with your purchasing and your buying, the quantities, etc.?
Across all three locations, yes. Most of the buying just is done through the Montreal location anyway. But with the economy the way it has been and the way it is, everyone has to make sure, every business person has to be very wary of, what they're bringing in. It will turn over and have a great ratio of turnover, because the cost of goods today is not what it once was, and we do monitor. We try to choose less. If we're going to buy certain SKUs, we try to stock less colors perhaps, or we try to mix and match as much as possible. And as clients demand, we do have to kind of expand, because customers are demanding more and more, whether it's ready-made panels, whether it's, in-stock hardware. There is the demand for it, but it's just a matter of, we are the experts, so we do have an idea of what would sell versus what wasn't. But having a team, having the family behind you, it allows you to be more selective and take on more educated buys.
What has been your best marketing technique? What's worked for you the best in thinking about over the last 65 years? Again, that wasn't you, but what has worked the best for this company, and what's going to work the best?
Well, I think this company has a great advantage over the Ottawa store because, with the South Shore locations in a market that's C&M is at least branded to most people. So most of the branding was done in the past, and now we could focus more on call to action advertising through the radio, and that's tremendous for us. And anytime we have a grand opening, we had a grand opening sale, or anytime there's any kind of promotions we want customers to be made aware of, or kind of still product knowledge we want them to be made aware of, the radio is the number one call to action. And in the future, we are going to try to get heavier and stronger on our social media and try to find ways to be creative with our advertising.
Dan, and as we talk to entrepreneurs that grow their business, that open different locations, there's so much that they have to take into consideration, and it's about the marketing, it's about the human resource, which you didn't even get to, and it's about the financing, because growth comes at a cost. You have to know your clients, you have to know your area, and you have to know your customer. And as I think we mentioned at the very beginning of the show, the summer was spent by John and Matt really trying to learn about all these areas to be as effective as possible when they come in. It takes planning. Entrepreneurs cannot downplay that enough. It takes a lot of planning. And part of that is when you're expanding, you got to deal with the IT, and you got to deal with the technology and how to make sure all stores are talking to each other in the right frame of mind.
Very intimidating, and Kevin Ammerman, the IT director at Fuller Landau, will help us walk through that. If your business is expanding, your computer should expand too, and Kevin will explain that after the break. Inspiring stories from outstanding business people, Dan Delmar, along with Josh Miller of Fuller Landau, and our guests this evening, Jonathan and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles. And we also bring into the conversation the IT director over at Fuller Landau, Kevin Ammerman. Welcome back, Kevin.
Hello.
So we're talking about expanding as C&M has, and of course, if you are expanding, opening up new locations, that requires new software, new networks, and you got to have your computers communicate, for lack of a better term. So tell us, what are some of the challenges in expanding your IT network along with the rest of your business?
Well, it really depends on the kind of business you're in and the environment you're in. These guys here at C&M, they're in a lucky place, being that they have multiple locations and they can occasionally try out some new things in their stores and see how things go. Most businesses don't have that luxury, so they got to find find a solution that they can trust and put into place quickly and carry on with it. And that really comes down to finding a good provider, somebody that's knowledgeable about the systems that are going into place, and making sure that it works the first time so that they can minimize the downtime.
Now, is it have to do with what happens in different locations? Because different locations, sometimes you have the accounting system in a central, or so maybe a lot of the MIS systems in a central location, but everybody's got to talk. Is that something difficult to set up?
In the past, it has been. These days, technology's come a long way, so we've got good internet connections. The connections are reliable, and it really depends on the type of systems you're setting up again. So if it's an ERP system that demands constant communication, and you've got to synchronize inventory between multiple locations, then you got to count on your system a lot more than you are if you're a smaller operation or in a different business. If it's not so retail-centric, if you're not carrying an inventory, sometimes all you need is email to communicate between those offices.
Is it easy to just plug in a couple of computers and go, or is there really more to it?
It really requires a lot of thought. So making sure that all of your locations are on the same page, that you're using the same systems, and that the communication between the locations is transparent. You don't want your users to have to worry about that kind of thing. You want it to just work. And especially if you have staff that's mobile, you're going from one location to another, you want to make sure that they can just step up to a computer and carry on. You don't want them to think about these things.
Now, should businesses expect downtime during these add-ons, these expansions, or can you really be smooth and up and running pretty quick?
You got to try to make it 100% uptime. Again, these days, the systems that have matured to the degree that we can do things in a pretty transparent manner. So unless you're talking about actually physically replacing people's computers, usually they don't even notice. The users can just carry on. Again, if it's a larger system, if it's a major overhaul, if you're putting into place a new CRM system or something like this, there's going to be an impact, but it's usually a training impact, so it's not necessarily downtime.
CRM being?
Client relationship management systems. It's similar to an ERP, but it's more an ERP is an enterprise resource planning system. CRM, you're dealing with clients and the management of clients and the information. And with an ERP, you're dealing about products and workflows and ordering systems and inventory and this kind of thing.
Jonathan, Matt, what were your experiences opening up new locations when it comes to IT and getting all that set up?
Well, with people like Kevin around, he sure makes things a lot easier for the not so computer savvy. We basically set up a network, and he did a flawless job. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So did it require a lot of technical skills, so that you had someone guide you through the whole process?
No,
he guided us through, and it was pretty efficient. In our line of business, it was just like Kevin was saying. It was important for us to be able to communicate across the 3 stores, so that if we can't be as present in one store at all times, then at least we could share some information across all 3 locations, and that really helped us.
And I think one of the issues, sometimes entrepreneurs, what they don't know. So they could be sitting with a bunch of old computers and they want to expand, and they're not sure if the new stuff will be compatible, and what about security. So I think when we come back from the break, we'll pick Kevin's brain about compatibility of old systems versus new systems and how we can get them talking to each other efficiently.
And of course, we end the show as we do on every edition with advice for today's entrepreneur. That's next. 7:56. And Josh, we're talking to Matthew and Jonathan Auger from C&M Textiles and Kevin Ammerman from Fuller Landau, the IT department there, about expanding and having your IT networks expand with your business.
And the compatibility of systems. If you have old systems and new systems, is it difficult to manage them, for want of a better term, talking with each other?
Yes, 100% yes. It's trying to maintain multiple systems, especially an older system, and trying to move that older information into a new system is not fun. It takes a lot of planning, and you got to make sure that you've got the right solution in place that you're moving towards, especially as you're growing and getting multiple locations. You got to make sure that you make the right choice before you roll this out, or else you're going to have some very unhappy employees and customers. And the customers will see it; they'll see the effects right away. If you're not able to give them the information they need when they want it, as they're standing in line and lining up at the cash register, they're not going to be happy.
Is there such thing as you need to update your systems if you really want everything to talk together? Can a 8-year-old computer talk to a brand new computer?
Yeah. In terms of age of the computers, they can, but you got to be careful. You got to think, okay, have I got my money's worth out of this computer? And if it dies tomorrow, how bad a trouble am I going to be in? So a little bit of proactive maintenance, a little bit of planning, making sure your backups are good, and making sure that you're flexible, so that if that computer does give up the ghost, you can move on to a new one with minimum downtime.
So many issues when it comes to expanding and dealing with your IT properly. But as we come to the end of the show, I'm going to turn to John and Matt and ask each one of them, what piece of advice would you give to today's entrepreneur? John?
Make sure you have a good team around you and plan ahead.
Matt?
I would say you have an idea and you have the ambition. You just go for it. Get the ball rolling. Take the necessary steps. And as John said, get a team behind you and just go for it.
Well, that's great. Dan, for our first show back, and I always end with some sort of takeaway. What kind of eye grab out of the discussion that we had? And I must say this one isn't obvious, but I hope the listeners got it. And it's about respect and it's about humility. It's about knowing where you come from. It's about knowing what you have to learn growing up. It's not about having a chip on your shoulder. It's not about having a certain amount of a sense of entitlement. Mm-hmm. It's learning about the business, making it yours, making it your passion, taking it out, and even expanding and helping grow, contributing to the family business, and not having just assume it's your own. And I think John and Matt today have exemplified what it means to take that to heart and not just say, Dad, Uncle, whatever, you gave it to me, I'm going to run with it. There's a level of respect. There's a certain amount of understanding, and they've portrayed that excellently.
Jonathan and Matthew Auger from C&M Textiles. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And Kevin Ammerman from the IT department at Fuller Landau. Thank you for your insights on all things computing.
Thank you.
And Josh will be back in 2 weeks. A week from Monday, 7 p.m. here on CJAD. You can reach Fuller Landau during business hours at 514-875-2865 or visit www.flmontreal.com.